steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs, sideline, touchdown, unbelievable.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Touchdown, Kansas City. Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
Yes, hello again everybody and welcome to another episode of Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. It's Sunday night. We are into the NFL season. We are a week and one game into the season that many people thought we wouldn't get, but we are only a few hours away now from week two. Week two, of course, kicked off on Friday with Cleveland and Cincinnati, the battle of the two Ohio teams. But the rest of us who are waiting for our teams to play, only a few hours now, go to bed and get a little bit of sleep, and we'll wake up and hopefully all see our teams win tomorrow. Well, we can't all see our teams win tomorrow, can we? But hopefully I do anyway. Week one, or before I'm going to have a look and go back and look at the week one results before we get into the games coming up. But it's looking okay in terms of the coronavirus testing that the NFL is doing. The results came in this week on Wednesday, and there were, between the period of September 6 and 12, there were 2,511 players in the league who received almost 16,000 tests, and there were 4,926 other team personnel who received 24,500 tests during that same period, and there were only two, I think, positive tests. So that's okay. The worrying thing is we learned over the weekend that there was a person who attended the opening game, Kansas City and Houston, who tested positive. So we hope that doesn't lead to anything serious and put the season in jeopardy. But we'll see. We'll see on that front. I'm reading here it was a groundskeeper who tested positive, but was nowhere near the players, apparently. So let's hope that nothing comes of that. There are a few teams in the league we saw last week. I think Kansas City were the only team who had fans in attendance from memory. And then on Friday there was, I think, 6,000 fans at the game between Cleveland and Cincinnati, which was in Cleveland. Adam Schefter on Twitter is saying that the Texans are working towards having up to 15,000 fans in week 4. The Colts are increasing from 2,500 fans in week 2 to 7,500 in week 3. So they are going to have some people in the stands tomorrow, Indianapolis, and then hopefully a few more the week after. And the Titans will have fans starting at 10% capacity and scaling up from there beginning in week 4. So baby steps for everybody, but we'll go and have a look at week 1, which was a very, very interesting week. We'll go all the way back to Thursday night football, which feels like a long time ago now. Kansas City at home, the reigning champions, far too strong for Houston, 34-20. That's probably about the scoreline that most people, I think, predicted. The big story to come out of that one was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the rookie. He was enormous. He had 25 rushes, 138 yards and a touchdown in his debut. So congratulations to everyone who had the foresight to draft him early on in their fantasy leagues. The Sunday games, or the Monday morning games, Australian time, big upset. The Washington, I nearly said their naughty nickname there. The Washington football team, a huge upset in week 1, 27-17 over the Philadelphia Eagles. That was a big win for Washington. I said last week that their massive front four on defense will be able to keep them in a lot of games. Well, they won them this game. I think they had 6 sacks all up, all between the guys up front there, including Chase Young, the rookie, who had a sack and a half. So great start for Washington. The Patriots, how good did Cam Newton look? He had a couple of rushing touchdowns, which was the most by a quarterback in a game for the Patriots in the franchise's history. They beat Miami 21-11. The Packers beat the Vikings 43-34. Aaron Rodgers looks like he's angry this year. That was a big win for them. And the Vikings, well, they'll be a little bit disappointed with the way that their season started, getting beaten by the Packers at home. Devontae Adams had 14 receptions in that one, which tied the single game franchise record for the Packers for catches in one game with 14. The Jaguars, that was another a big surprise, 27-20 winners at home over Indianapolis. Philip Rivers, some concerns in that game. He didn't look very good at all, did he? Only one game, we don't overreact one way or the other in week one, and especially not this year with pretty much no off-season really, or not a normal off-season anyway. But Jacksonville, they're 1-0, so that's a massive win for them, 27-20, like I said. Chicago, a massive last quarter comeback over Detroit, with Mitch Trubisky throwing, I think, 3 touchdowns in the last quarter to come from behind to beat the Lions, 27-23. Chicago winners in that one. The Raiders, they put up 34 points. Josh Jacobs was enormous, 3 rushing touchdowns, which was the most in his short career. The Las Vegas Raiders, they beat the Panthers 34-30. The Jets and the Bills are far too strong, 27-17, only 10-point winners, but they were a lot better in that game. The Ravens, they got off to a really good start. They smacked the Browns 38-6. They just walked all over them, so they're off and running again with Lamar Jackson in fine form. The Seahawks, they've got a crazy record on the road, the Seahawks, in the last sort of season and a half. They've beaten the Falcons on the road in week 1, 38-25, so they're off and running. Seattle. Chargers and the Bengals are mightily unlucky. Joe Burrow took them all the way down the field, and then Randy Bullock shanked that field goal attempt, which would have tied the scores and likely sent it to overtime, so they lost 13-16. The Chargers come all the way over and knocked them off in the final seconds. One of the big wins as well in week 1 was Arizona. They beat San Francisco 24-20. Kyler Murray looked fantastic. I know he's a dark horse MVP for a lot of people, I should say, and he started really well. A good win in that division. It's going to be a difficult division, so they're 1-0 already in that one, Arizona. New Orleans, they played at home to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. They were a little bit sloppy, Brady and the Buccaneers. They still put up 23 points, but the Saints beat them 34-23, and I can just imagine what Bucs fans were thinking when Tom Brady threw a couple of those really bad interceptions, including that pick 6, which Janoris Jenkins took back to the house. They must have just been thinking, oh my God, we just had Jameis Winston. Now we bring the greatest quarterback to ever live to town, and he's doing much the same thing. But they'll be okay, the Bucs. They're a bit sloppy, but they're 0-1 with the Saints too strong. On Sunday Night Football, the Rams, they might be back. I reckon people might have slept on the Rams. They won 20-17. The Cowboys had that absolutely dreadful refereeing decision, which cost them. There were some bad refereeing decisions in this game, actually, but that cost the Cowboys a chance late to have the ball within field goal range and to kick a field goal and tie the game and possibly send it to overtime. But the Rams, I don't think you can argue with the fact that they won that game. They were just they were far too good. And then the doubleheader Monday night, the Steelers in New York beat the Giants. What was the score in that one? 26-16. Saquon Barkley was absolutely shut down by that Steelers defense. So a good win there. In the second game, the Titans, they absolutely escaped with a win over the Broncos, 16-14. Stephen Gostkowski kicked the field goal that won them the game in the end with 25 seconds left. But 3 missed field goals leading up to that, including one was blocked and missed a PAT as well. So that was an interesting night for one of the best kickers in NFL history. He certainly didn't look like that on Monday Night Football, but they got a win at Denver, the Titans. That's a tough place to go and win, so well done to them. So they were the results in week 1. The biggest winner, in my opinion, there was a couple of teams that had some really good wins in week 1, but for me, I can't go past Washington. I think the off-season that they had, turmoil left, right, and centre, and then some with the name change and all of that. And I mentioned a lot of things that happened last week with Washington in the off-season. Then Ron Rivera diagnosed with cancer as well, and kudos to him getting the scheduled IV at halftime to sort of getting through the second game. That was just an enormous victory for Washington. They are one team that, with everything that's happened in the off-season, they just need to get back to winning ways, and they need to just win some football games. And Dwayne Haskins looked okay, but the story of that game really was the comeback and the effort from that front seven. Like I said earlier, they're going to keep this team in some games, but they're going to win some games, and they are 1-0, and this is a team that a lot of people thought might only win 2 or 3 games this year, but they've already beaten a team that are in contention, I think, anyway, in Philadelphia. So well done, Washington. That was huge. The biggest loser from week 1, you may think that because I had the biggest winner, Washington, the biggest loser has to be Philadelphia. I don't think. I still think Philadelphia, they'll have some players back this week. I still think they're okay. The biggest loser for me was Indianapolis, and I know that they played away from home in week 1, and they lost to a divisional rival, and strange things can happen in division games, but that was such that they should have won that game. I don't care. What people say, they should have won that game. They trade away their first round pick to get into Forrest Buckner. They bring in Phillip Rivers, and they expected a lot better, and they didn't get it. So to lose that game to a team that is nowhere near Indianapolis in terms of the talent on paper, and in terms of expectations for this year, that was a bad loss for Indianapolis. It's compounded, of course, by the fact that Marlon Mack is done for the year. A torn Achilles, I think, from memory. It may have been an ACL. I think it was an Achilles. So Jonathan Taylor, the rookie from Wisconsin, come on down, man. This is your season now. You have to step up if Indianapolis are going to win this Super Bowl or even win this division and do some damage in the playoffs. Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, you've got to go, man. This is your time. So that's what happened in week 1. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have a look at, we'll turn our attention to what happened on Friday with Cleveland and Cincinnati, and then we'll sink our teeth into the games that we have to come early tomorrow morning. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a tick. Welcome back. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with Brent Sternberg on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Before the break, we had a bit of a look at, a wrap-up of week 1 and all of the crazy stuff that happened. We're now going to turn our attention to week 2, which starts really in earnest tomorrow morning, but there was a game, of course, Thursday night football on Friday morning. It was between the 2 Ohio teams, Cleveland and Cincinnati. Cleveland come out on top in that one, 35-30. Both these teams, of course, lost in week 1. So it was a battle of the 2 Ohio teams to get their first win of the season. 35-30, Cleveland, the winners. Baker Mayfield looked quite good in this one, actually. His stats, if I can get this up, let's have a look here. Baker Mayfield for the Browns, 16 of 23, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. The interception he had, he was picked off late in the game by the Cincinnati cornerback, whose name just escaped me, Williams. Someone Williams, I'm sorry, I can't quite remember his name. But that was really the only mistake that he made in that game, Baker Mayfield. So 35-30, the winners there, Cleveland. Joe Burrow played okay, just held on to the football at times during that one. And, that's not a good idea when you've got a team like Cleveland who have some guys, I should say, coming after you all the time. So, I mean, this game has come around quickly for these two teams. So they've very quickly played 2 games now, and Cincinnati find themselves 0-2. It's it's probably where we expect them to be. They've played 2 teams. They could have beaten the Chargers, but they didn't. And I mean, to be honest, Cleveland were just the better team on the night, I should say. William Jackson is the man who had the interception there for the Bengals. So Cleveland 1-1, Cincinnati 0-2. Now let's turn our attention to the games tomorrow morning. The first one I'll have a look at here. The Steelers are at home to the Broncos. The Steelers with a good win over the New York Giants on kind of Monday Night Football. It was the doubleheader on Monday night, wasn't it? So the first game there, they look quite good. Big Ben is back. He threw a couple of touchdowns there, 3, I think. So it was a good win for the Steelers. The Broncos, that was one that got away at home to Tennessee. Denver, they've won 3 of the last 4 games against Pittsburgh. I'm seeing here. I think the Steelers. I think the Steelers at home. Philip Lindsay won't be playing. He's got turf toe of all injuries. So I think the Steelers will be too strong in that one. Showdown in the AFC South. Tennessee, who escaped there in Denver, they will play the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one will be in Tennessee. Tennessee, they've had the wood over Jacksonville. They've won 5 of the last 6 games. I think this is an opportunity to see Jacksonville back up after that surprising win in week 1 and see if they're for real. Tennessee, like I say, they got away with a win a little bit. They didn't really get out, or they felt like they had the handbrake on that game, Tennessee. So we'll have another look at them tomorrow. That one, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Carolina. Both these teams started 0-1. The Buccaneers just weren't quite good enough against the Saints. Tom Brady, he'll be better for the run, I would have thought. So they'll play Carolina, who did pretty well last week to put up 30 points. But strange things, like I say, can happen in division games. But you would think that the Buccaneers will be too strong in that one. The Philadelphia Eagles will be at home looking to make amends. They have the LA Rams come to town. Rams looked okay against the Cowboys. They had a lot of good things happen for them, the Rams. They had their offensive line who looked a lot better. A couple of their offensive weapons. Cam Akers got involved a little bit. Woods looked fantastic. And Jared Goff was pretty good on the night as well. This is a tricky one. I'm going to pick Philadelphia to get back on the winners list, but not with a lot of confidence. They do have a couple of players coming back. I think I saw Miles Sanders will be back tomorrow morning and Lane Johnson on the offensive line as well. So that helps because that offensive line for Philly got absolutely eaten alive by Washington. San Francisco and the Jets. Jets weren't that great. To be honest, these are 2 teams who weren't that great in week 1. San Francisco had a game against Arizona that they kind of let slip. Richard Sherman is on IR. Both these teams have put teams on IR this week. Richard Sherman for the Niners and Le'Veon Bell for the Jets. The Jets, what's this? I see here they've scored fewer than 20 points in 11 of the last 17 games. Well, it's not, having Le'Veon Bell on IR as well, that's not going to help that, is it? The Jets, I think they've got 2 of their next games in New York, so it'll be interesting to see if they stay there. The Jets tomorrow and then the Giants the week after. I think San Francisco, I think this is a pretty simple one for them on the rebound to get back to 1-0. Miami and the Bills. Miami, Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't play too well. If they lose this one, I bet the goals will come from Tua already after only 2 games. So they play Buffalo, who looked okay, looked pretty good against the Jets, but I mean everybody looks good against the Jets. Sorry, that was a low blow. Josh Allen threw for over 300 yards. I would expect the Bills to go 2-0 here in the division. They'll be too strong, I would have thought. Here's an interesting game. This next one, Indianapolis at home to the Minnesota Vikings, 2 teams that would have had their hopes set on possibly a division title to both of these teams, and 2 disappointing losers in week 1. Indianapolis, Marlon Mack is on injured reserve. So Jonathan Taylor will have to come in, and Minnesota, well, they're a strange one. I mean, they put up some points, but not enough at home to beat the Packers, and now they're on the road to an Indianapolis team that will be pretty keen to get a win. Another chance to see Phillip Rivers, another chance to see if that was just a bad game or if he's actually fallen over the cliff. Indianapolis 5 consecutive wins over Minnesota. I mean, these 2 teams don't play all that often, do they? I'm going to put my faith in Indianapolis for another week. But, we'll see. Detroit and the Packers. The Packers at Lambeau. First home game. And the Lions. 4-1, Matt Stafford. 4-1 against the Packers since 2017. They'll be pretty disappointed about their result last week, I should say, the Lions. And they'll be pretty keen to get a win on the board. But the Packers, man, a lot of people might have been wrong about the Packers, and I'm one of them. Their offense, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that was fantastic. And this is a Lions defense that isn't too great. They will get Jeff Okudah back, their first round pick, though. He didn't play last week. He was struggling with a hamstring injury. So he'll probably come into his first game of play against Devontae Adams. So good luck, Jeff Okuda. Packers for me there at home. Cowboys and the Falcons, these are two teams that were beaten in week 1 as well. The Cowboys are back at home, smashed by injuries. They lost their tight end, Blake Jarwin, the linebacker, Leighton Vander Esch as well. This is going to be an interesting game, and I think the Cowboys are there to be had for the Falcons, but I'm going to stick with the Cowboys, injuries aside. That's a big game there. Those two teams need a win. But I'll stick with the Cowboys. And then the final game in that first, the 1 p.m. time slot of games is an interesting one as well. The Chicago Bears at home at Soldier Field against the New York Giants. The Bears rallied last week and come from behind and beat the Detroit Lions. Mitch Trubisky was... He wasn't great for the first 3 quarters, and the last quarter he seemed to turn it on. And then the Giants, who were almost the opposite, Daniel Jones was looking really good, and then he had that, I think it was a 18 or 19 play drive that ended in that really bad throw that was ended in a Pittsburgh interception. So we'll see who wins this one. This is a big chance for the Chicago Bears to go 2-0, isn't it? I don't think too many people would have seen that one coming. So if they can get a win at home here against the Giants, then they'll be 2-0, and they'll be in the thick of the division after only 2 weeks, of course. And the Giants, I want to get a bit more out of Saquon Barkley. To the mid-afternoon games we go. We've got Arizona and Washington, two of, I guess, the surprise winners from last week. A battle of the first-round quarterbacks from the 2019 draft class, of course. It says here on the NFL app that I'm having a bit of a squeeze out. Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins. Haskins looked okay. Murray looked fantastic. So this is back in the desert. Interesting one. I mean, can Washington do it again? I mean, Arizona don't have the best of offensive lines, do they? So maybe they can get after Kyler Murray. But, I mean, Kyler Murray's not going to hold on to the football as long as Carson Wentz did. Wentz just holds onto it and holds onto it and holds onto it and just hopes for something to pop open, whereas Kyler Murray runs around and sort of dazzles everyone that comes for him. I'm going to go with Arizona. I didn't have the guts to pick them to win this division, and after 1 week, I'm already having a bit of sort of second thoughts about that. So I think Arizona to beat Washington. The LA Chargers get their first chance to play at home in their nice new stadium. They welcome the Kansas City Chiefs to SoFi Stadium. I don't know about this. I think the Chargers might be they might get a bit of a drubbing, I think, with their first home game there. How about this? Kansas City won 11 of the last 12 games against the Chargers. To be completely honest, I'm not surprised to hear that. So I think in a big win, the Kansas City Chiefs over the LA Chargers. Okay, I'm going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, we'll have a look at the last remaining games for Week 2. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a bit. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talkin American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on this Sunday night on KC Radio 97.7 FM. Just going through and having a look at the games in Week 2 coming up tomorrow. Of course, there's a bunch of games, and then we'll have Monday Night Football on Tuesday morning. So we've still got, 3 games to get through. Last one we looked at before the break was the Chargers and the Chiefs. So that's the 6:25 a.m. game tomorrow morning. So that's nice if you're a Chiefs or Chargers fan. You don't have to get up too early. It's a little bit more palatable, I should say, as opposed to 3 a.m. Baltimore and Houston fans, you'll be getting up at 6:25 a.m. as well to see Houston play the Baltimore Ravens. Now, how about Houston? They have been absolutely stooged by the NFL people who do the fixturing there. They play Kansas City in Week 1 in Kansas City, and then they play Baltimore in Week 2, albeit at home in Houston. But my God, do the NFL schedulers hate Houston or what? They have to play the two, I guess, how most people see it, I suppose, the best 2 teams in the AFC in Weeks 1 and 2. So they weren't good enough against Kansas City. Houston in Week 1, they come home to play Baltimore, who were absolutely all over Cleveland last week. This I think will be, well, I think it'll be a Baltimore win, to be completely honest, and I think it'll be a comfortable Baltimore win. They just don't have enough to support Deshaun Watson. I think I said this last week, the Houston Texans. They got David Johnson in that now ill-fated trade of DeAndre Hopkins going to Arizona and then David Johnson coming back the other way. He didn't look too bad on Thursday night, the opening game, Thursday night football last week, David Johnson. If he can get back to his best and he can sort of, the two Johnsons there, Duke Johnson and David can sort of get, a good 1-2 tandem there going, that will help Deshaun Watson. But the offensive line is still not good enough, I don't think, and they gave away, I can't remember how many penalties they gave away, but they just didn't look like they'd improved enough in that game against Kansas City. And now, as good as Kansas City are, the offensive line there for Houston will be facing a much better pass rush from Baltimore. So this one could get a little bit ugly. Obviously, Baltimore, they've got Lamar Jackson, who is brilliant. And I mean, if his week one performance is anything to go by, he looks like he might go close to winning league MVP again this year. He threw the ball a bunch, didn't run it as much in week one, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to do so tomorrow over Houston. So I would expect that one to be a comfortable Baltimore victory. And they've won their last 13, Baltimore, 13 consecutive regular season games. So if they win this one, that'll obviously be 14 in a row for the Baltimore Ravens. And then Sunday night football, this will be an interesting one. This is the rematch of Super Bowl. Now, can I remember this off the top of my head? Super Bowl 49, Seattle and the New England Patriots. This will be at the stadium there in Seattle. I can't quite remember what that one's called. Is it CenturyLink Field? I think it's CenturyLink Field. It's going to be interesting. This will be the quietest game that they've played there, Seattle, in a long, long time. It's normally renowned for being one of the loudest stadiums, or if not the loudest stadium, in all of the NFL. New England will go there and they'll have the benefit of playing with no one there. There may be a few people there. I can't actually recall seeing whether or not they're going to have fans there, Seattle. But given that the state of Washington has been one of the hardest hits in terms of coronavirus cases, then I doubt that they would have too many people there, if any. Interesting how they went about things last week, Seattle. I said earlier that they have a great record at home. They are a team that like to run the ball, and I know that sort of frustrates a lot of Seattle people because they want to see Russell Wilson, turn it loose, and that's exactly what he did last week, and that's why people want to see it. He's a magnificent thrower of the ball. He's got some weapons there all of a sudden, with DK Metcalf into his second season now, and Tyler Lockett, who's a good player. Greg Olsen, the tight end as well. Chris Carson at running back had a good game. So it'll be interesting to see if they really have changed their philosophy or if they just liked that matchup, and that's just it's going to be a week-to-week basis. We could see two quarterbacks running around all over the place, with Cam Newton as well, who had a couple of big games himself as a Carolina Panther against Seattle. So let's see if he can do the same thing with New England. Like I said earlier, he rushed for a couple of touchdowns against Miami, which was a Patriots franchise record. So we will see with this one. They've had a really good record away from home, Seattle, but the weird thing is they haven't been as strong at home as they have been. I mean, if you have a look at the last sort of decade and you think about the teams that have had really strong home ground advantages, I mean, these are two of them actually, Seattle and New England, but particularly Seattle, with that really vocal crowd. But that really hasn't transitioned to, or it hasn't resulted, I should say, in wins at home of recent times. I think this will be a Seattle win. I think they're a better team than New England. Are they better coached? I mean, is any team coached better than New England? Probably not, but It's going to be the first primetime game for the Patriots, obviously in the post-Tom Brady era. And this will be the first primetime game that Cam Newton has started for a little while. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. If we get half as good a game as what we got in that Super Bowl 49, we'll be in for a beauty on Sunday Night Football. And then the final game, this is Monday night, Tuesday, of course, our time, 10:15. It's the debut, the first time we will see Allegiant Stadium there in Las Vegas. It'll be the first time, I should say, sorry, a professional football team has played in Las Vegas. It's the Las Vegas Raiders who welcome the New Orleans Saints to Sin City. Two teams that had good wins in week one. I mean, the Raiders against Carolina were made to work for it, but they got great. I suppose, production out of Josh Jacobs, and Derek Carr sort of threw the ball around a little bit. And the defense come up with some big plays as well. There was the play on the goal line that I think Clee Farrell and Corey Littleton were the front seven guys that stuffed that last play for Carolina, a play in which they used Christian McCaffrey as a decoy. A decoy. That's an expensive decoy. So at home, yeah, how would they go? I wonder. The Saints were good against Tampa Bay. I mean, it really did look like two teams where one had continuity, coming in from the previous season in New Orleans, and the Bucks who didn't really, which is to be expected. I know you got Tom Brady, who's a wonderful quarterback, but you've got it's still a new offense, and there's still a lot of new pieces there. But the Saints were far too good. Their defense was great. There's one big issue for the New Orleans Saints, and it's a monster issue, and that is perhaps their best player, Michael Thomas, is injured. He has an ankle injury, and he's going to be out, from what I can tell, for a few weeks. So that is not, it's not ideal. I mean, it's an absolute dagger. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders in the offseason from, where'd he come from? From San Francisco. So I mean, they'll be feeling a lot better about that acquisition now with Mike Thomas gone. So it gives an opportunity for a couple of guys to stand up. I mean, they have to stand up. They've got no choice really. Emmanuel Sanders is there as the veteran, but some other guys like Traquan Smith. And some other dudes too. Perhaps the second year guy who is used as a punt returner, but he's a good wide receiver in and of his own right, even though he doesn't get the ball thrown to him all that much. Deontay Harris, and we may see Taysom Hill coming into the game plan, the offensive game plan there as well. I was really happy for the Saints for Alvin Kamara, who signed a big deal a little while ago, and he had a year last year. He was okay, but he was obviously sort of banged up and had some injuries and wasn't himself. But he looked like he was back to his best. It's funny that he gets a big paycheck and then he looks like he's back to his best. So great to see Alvin Kamara up and running. This is an interesting game. I'm not sure who to pick. I want to pick the Raiders in a big win for the Las Vegas team back at home, but New Orleans were my Super Bowl tip out of the NFC, so I'm going to go with New Orleans. So for Sunday Night Football, I've tipped Seattle over New England, and for Monday Night Football, I have picked the Saints to beat the Raiders. So just recapping the games there, I've picked the Steelers to beat the Broncos, Tennessee over Jacksonville, Tampa Bay over Carolina, Philadelphia over the Rams, although I'm not real confident in that one. Where's the next game here? I've picked the Niners to beat the Jets, and I would expect that, in all honesty, to be a comfortable victory. I then have picked the Bills to beat Miami in Miami. I'm picking the Colts to beat the Vikings, the Packers at home to beat the Lions, and the Dallas Cowboys to beat the Falcons. Chicago at home to beat the Giants. That's a difficult one, but I think the Bears will be too good. Arizona to beat Washington. The Chiefs to have a comfortable victory over the Chargers at the Chargers' first home game. at their new stadium. The Ravens to beat the Texans comfortably. Seattle and the Saints to win on Sunday night and Monday night football, respectively. So there's some really interesting games in week 2. There's a bunch of teams that can go to 2-0. There's some teams that will be very keen to avoid going 0-2. We know that when you start the season 0-2, it'll be interesting to see how the extra playoff spot this season will change teams' perspectives on that. But we generally see teams who start 0-2. It's a long way back into the season, and we've got teams like Dallas, like Philadelphia, the Vikings, Indianapolis, Detroit, who I picked to win their division. A whole bunch of teams who will be keen to get on the winners list, and to avoid going 0-2. And there's a bunch of teams I think this week on upset alert as well. We saw some last week. You generally don't go a week in the NFL without seeing a couple of upsets. So that is the slate for week 2. I'm going to take another quick break here, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up and we'll have a bit of a look at what happened in college football last week as well. I'm talking American footy with me, Brent Sternberg. You're listening to Casey Radio 97.7 FM. Back in a bit. Welcome back, gang. You're listening to Talkin' American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg, on Casey Radio 97.7 FM. We just had a look before the break at the remaining games in week 2. And we'll turn our attention now and have a bit of a look at what's happening in college football. College football, of course, has been back for a couple of weeks now. Today was week 3. And there's actually some big news this week with the Big Ten. Of course, at the moment, we've got the Big 12 and the ACC and a couple of the non-Power 5 conferences actually playing. And the SEC is set to start their conference play next week. But the two big conferences that are not playing, the Pac-12 and the Big 10, there was a pretty big announcement from the Big 10 this week that they will be resuming play on the weekend of October 24. So there's been some conjecture as to when some of these conferences were going to restart. And like I say, we've got a few of the leagues that have already had their season kick off. The Big 10 and the Pac-12 were two that sort of put a pause on their season. The Big 10 now, there was some talk about perhaps maybe playing in the fall, so sort of beginning February or March next season and going through till June. That's not going to happen with the Big 10 now. They're going to begin in roughly a month's time, so the weekend of October 24, like I say. Each team is going to play or attempt to play 8 games in 8 weeks. So it will be a truncated season there for the Big 10. That's not going to leave too much room in terms of, players testing positive and then perhaps games being postponed or whatever. So there's not much room for error there. So we'll see with the Big 10. Nothing yet on the Pac-12. Not that I can see anyway. So I guess if we're going to see one league play in the fall and see how that goes, it may very well be the Pac-12. I'll just quickly wrap up what happened last week in college football. So the ACC and the Big 12 are the two leagues that are going at it. Miami, that is the Miami Hurricanes. They beat the University of Alabama Birmingham 31-14. Iowa State, they were involved in a bit of an upset. They were beaten by Louisiana Lafayette 31-14. So they've got a couple of draft prospects, the Cyclones, including their quarterback Brock Purdy, but they went down. So not the best start. The University of North Carolina, they're the 12th ranked team in the nation at the moment. They beat Syracuse last week 31-6. They've got a quarterback playing for them, the Tar Heels, Sam Howell. Keep an eye on him. He may be in in the Heisman Trophy hunt perhaps this year if he can continue his good work from last season. Appalachian State, they won 35-20 over Charlotte. Army beat Louisiana Monroe 37-0. Army have started the season ranked number 22, so good on them. Notre Dame, the 7th ranked team in the nation, 27-13 winners over Duke. Pittsburgh, they smashed Austin, PA. I think that's how you say it. 55-0. That was a shutout, actually. Speaking of shutouts, Oklahoma, 48-0 over Missouri State. They've got some nice players as well, Oklahoma, this season. Clemson, in probably the pick of the game, Clemson beat Wake Forest 37-13. Louisville, another team there in the ACC, they beat Western Kentucky 35-21. And Texas, who have started the season ranked in the top 10, number 9 to be exact, they beat UTEP 59-3. There was a whole bunch of games as well this morning. I'll touch on them in a little bit more depth in next week's episode. But we will have, like I say, some of the SEC schools back in action next week. If I can just reload this page. So we'll have LSU and Alabama and all of those teams back in action. So who have we got here? We've got Ole Miss. They will play Florida. Who else have we got? I'm just trying to go through and see. We've got Auburn at Kentucky. That will be an interesting one indeed. Just trying to see if Alabama and those schools are back in business. Yes, they are. Alabama will play Missouri. So that should be a pretty simple win, I would have thought, for Alabama. LSU are back in action. They will play Mississippi State. So there's a pretty simple game for LSU back in contention there. You would think perhaps for maybe another go around at the national championship, although they lost a bunch of players. I think they lost something like 10 of their 11 starters on offense or defense. Sorry, 10 of their 11 starters. So but they're a school that just replenish talent, don't they? They've got players that grow on trees down there in the Bayou. Georgia, they've got a championship in their sights this season. National championships, that is. They play Arkansas. That's at 6 a.m. Texas A&M and Vanderbilt in a couple of weeks. South Carolina and Tennessee. So a whole bunch of interesting games happening there in the SEC next week. That's really when the college football season will begin in earnest with the big league back. Of course, the SEC looked at by a lot of people as the number one school in terms of the number one league, I should say, in terms of talent among its schools. And then as of October 24, all leagues will be back, and it'll be interesting to see how they do the national championship this year with the leagues not running simultaneously. And I dare say by the time the Big Ten kicks in mid-late October, that's if things don't change between now and then. It'll be interesting to see how they sort of work out the national championships, because by the time that kicks off, some of the leagues may have finished. And in the Pac-12's case, that may not have even begun. So we'll see what happens there. That's also going to have ramifications with the off season as well. Not just with the bowl season, which normally begins in the middle of December and then wraps up in early to mid-January with the championships game, but also with the opportunity for players to declare for the draft. I did see a couple of weeks ago that the NCAA, the board of directors there, they have actually given the green light for all players to have an extra year of eligibility. So seniors that have opted out for the season this year, that in any case, in another sense would have been their final year, they will now have another season of eligibility if they want to come back. So it basically treats this year as a redshirt year for all players. So it'll be interesting to see, particularly with, I think, a lot of the players that have already opted out and they've said that they have declared for the NFL draft. As long as they haven't already signed with a manager or a management firm, then they will be allowed to return, even if they are seniors. So I know a bunch of the top end talent that was set to or have good years and then be top picks have opted out of this year, like Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State, and a few other guys as well. I know Gregory Rousseau, the pass rusher there at Miami, is not going around. Jamar Chase, I believe, opted out as well, so he's the wide receiver there. So there's a lot going on in college football, and it's a very tricky time. And I dare say that college football may look different as soon as possibly next season because of everything that's sort of gone on there. I think the whole timeline of everything will be thrown out in terms of the pre-draft process. The combine that's normally in late February, that'll probably be pushed back. And then, of course, you have pro days where the scouts go and have a look at the prospects, at the facilities, at the university. That's that's one thing to say that might be pushed back, but that may not even happen next year. And I know that this year we only had, I think, a handful of schools that actually had their pro days before everything got shut down. So that will be a bit of a shame. And then the draft is normally in late April. I have been reading around the traps that there is a possibility, the NFL have said that there is a possibility that the draft can be pushed back to as late as, I think, early or mid-June. Now, if that's the case, obviously players that are drafted at that time, that's only going to be, a 2.5 month turnaround before the season begins. But, if that is what it takes, to have everything that sort of goes off the rails for 1 year to allow everybody that second year to come back and get back on track, that would be a good thing. So interesting times for college football, and we'll see what happens there, I suppose. But as for the NFL, it is week 2 tomorrow, and there's a bunch of good games, and like I say, potential for some upsets. There's some games that I'm liking the look of. I'm going to get up and see my Pittsburgh Steelers hopefully get up. The games on television tomorrow for all of us that don't have Game Pass. So it's the 3 a.m. game on 7, mate, will be Tampa Bay and Carolina. So that's good news for you, Tampa Tom Brady lovers out there. You'll get to see him go around again for the second week in a row. And the other game, 3 a.m. on ESPN, is the Falcons and the Cowboys. Looking forward to that game. That will be an interesting game. 6:30, 7, mate, you've got the AFC West showdown, the Chiefs and the Chargers. And then at ESPN at that same time slot, you've got the Ravens and the Texans. Get up and have a look at one of the Super Bowl favorites go around. The Baltimore Ravens, I think they're going to have another big win there. And Sunday Night Football, of course, New England and Seattle at Seattle. That's on ESPN from 10:30. And Monday Night Football, which will be the first ever broadcast game, professional football game, I should say, in Sin City. That's the Raiders and the Saints at Allegiant Stadium. I'm really enjoying seeing these new stadiums being new. Sunday Night Football last week, the Rams at home to the Cowboys, that just looked fantastic and felt a bit eerie, and it was a little bit strange not having anyone there, but hopefully that changes. That changes soon enough. The Chargers have got their opportunity to play there tomorrow morning against the Chiefs. Hopefully that game goes their way, although I'm not too sure. That might be a bad initiation for the Chargers at their home stadium. And then at the nice little Allegiant Stadium there, not little, I think it holds something like 65,000, 70,000 people. It won't have anyone in attendance this year, unfortunately, but hopefully they'll get fans in there soon enough, the Raiders, and hopefully with everybody watching from home, they can get a win against the Saints. I think that would be a huge win for them to get to 2-0 and keep pace with the Chiefs, who I expect to go 2-0. So Allegiant Stadium, I'm looking forward to seeing that one on Monday Night Football. Rightio. That's it, gang. That's all from me. Go and get some sleep. I know I'm going to, and I'll be up early to have a look at all the goings on in the NFL tomorrow morning, and I will be back next week. And if my Pittsburgh Steelers don't get up, I will be very grumpy. So I'll see you next Sunday night, 10 p.m. Same time, same place, KC Radio 97.7 FM for Talking American Footy with me, Brent Sternberg. Next week, 10 p.m, that's when I'll see you again. Bye now.